Hello, sweet souls. This is DTO in the flow. And today I get to interview a phenomenal, extraordinary human being that has provided massive wisdom, knowledge, and inspiration for my own personal practice, Ashton. And he's been studying and practicing yoga for more than 20 years, having first been introduced to yoga when he was 12 years old by his Japanese jiu-jitsu sensei, Steve Copping. He has taken teacher trainings with Perry Ness, Synergy Yoga, David Golett, Chakra Yoga, and Leanne Carey Yoga, as well as studied with numerous other teachers and guides. He is, I imagine you have more than your 200-hour teacher training, and you've been exposed and really bathed yourself into Eastern philosophies. I know he's a world traveler. If you can see this picture that represents like his adventurous lifestyle. And I know that at the ripe age of 5, he learned martial arts, which, as we probably speak into this about the combination of how the Eastern practices, martial arts, Tai Chi, yoga, a lot of these things kind of intersect. His natural curiosity and drive for understanding has led him to various spiritual art forms from traditions all over the world, heavily influenced by teachers like Douglas Brooks, Joseph Campbell, and Alan Watts. Ashton brings a universality to his teachings that extends beyond just the realms of yoga. So here we're bringing on Ashton. Welcome.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you, man.
Great to see you. Yes. I'm grateful that you're here, and I'm grateful that there is an opportunity for those individuals that are watching right now, live streaming, to ask any questions, comment, share this live stream, so people that are out there in this moment can really understand how there's a depth of Ashton's practice of yoga that, if you follow him online or see his Facebook stream, he's bringing that to his daughter, his family, and to his community. And, you know, there's so many ways that I personally, when I've experienced your class, one of the words that always came through for me was like this moment. For some reason that resonated with me. And I'm grateful that you also enjoy the teachings of Alan Watts. I used one of his samples in my music where he says, "Ready to wake up." So it's such a, I want to read, in addition to what I read to everyone, all the descriptors that you have on your Instagram page, which is Yoga with Ashton. All right. So this is, you're an adventurer, yogi, educator, meditator, storyteller, podcaster, anatomy geek, father and husband. And since we said anatomy geek, I have to put this picture up.
Those are my favorite tights to teach in by far.
Totally. And I have to show this picture, which represents truly, you know, all the different places in the world you've traveled. And this is me, ladies and gentlemen, just simply doing a Google search for Ashton. And this is what popped up. I just took a screenshot and I kept above what showed up with your name, you know, podcast, Yoga with Ashton, anatomy, right? There's all these meditation. So there's all these amazing ways that you're able to show up. Here's a beautiful photo with your family. Oh my gosh.
There's like no gray in the beard in all those photos.
Yeah, right. Totally. And later we'll speak into one of your expert specialties is anatomy. And can't wait to kick it off with the first question. So tell us about your personal journey with yoga and why is it important to you?
Sure. So as you kind of mentioned before, I was introduced to yoga by my Japanese jiu-jitsu sensei who used to teach us yoga as the sort of preliminary warm-ups for our martial arts practice. So the martial and spiritual arts were always intertwined. He taught us Ashtanga yoga. And so that kind of like planted the seeds for later on. And it was an on again, off again practice. I mean, my jiu-jitsu sensei, I started jiu-jitsu I was 12 was when I got serious with it, but I've been doing martial arts since I was 5. But so my teacher started teaching us that. And then the next few years kind of off and on again. And then in my early 20s, I started to pick it up again as a more serious thing. It was my mid 20s that things kind of got real, as it were, with it, where I decided I had a health and wellness business. I had just done my first yoga teacher training. I was doing a lot of body work and massage, and I went to China for a month to study esoteric Taoism, because at the time yoga was more a physical practice, and my spiritual practice was more Taoist based. So I went to China, and being in China, I kind of had the first real experience that, like, oh, like all the questions that I had growing up, all the things that when I would ask people around me growing up, they're like, don't ask those questions. Like, go to school, get your good grades, get a job. Like, don't worry about that stuff. It doesn't matter. In another country, they're like, oh, you have those questions? Well, go talk to that person over there in the monastery or up on the mountain or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. You mean that this is actually like an acceptable thing to be asking these questions, and it's important, and people care about these things, and you can go and learn more about this stuff. So it really shifted my perspective on what was possible in terms of the importance of where these types of questions are in life. And came home from that trip. I was engaged at the time. I ended my engagement. I closed down my business. I had some money saved from selling a condo that I lived in Los Angeles, and booked a one-way ticket to Asia. Got rid of most of my stuff, packed a few things into storage, and then traveled for the next 6.5 years, studying all sorts of different stuff. I mean, most of it under the umbrella of yoga, but also was in South America studying shamanism and stuff like that, which for me, it all fits under the umbrella of yoga. Yeah, I mean, it was really like, okay, I'm done with the Western way of living. I really had no intention of ever moving back to the United States or anything like that. As a matter of fact, jumping ahead, when I eventually met my wife and we found out that we were pregnant with with our daughter, my first thing was like, okay, but I'm not moving back to the United States. I mean, that was literally like the first thing that I said. I'm like, okay, if we can have this child, but like, I'm not moving back to the United States. Of course, here I am 8 years later, living in the United States. But I don't know. I mean, why is it important to me? There's very few things in my life that are less important to me, or excuse me, or that there are very few things in my life that are more important to me. Say, like, my family is important, but it's what allows me to be a human being and not be just a bundled up ball of stress and tension and anxiety and worries. It's the thing that daily grounds me into being. And I mean, again, yoga is different for a lot of people, and traditions are quite different in their approach. I'm involved in the tantric traditions, and it's really all about embodiment and living as a Jivan Mukti, as someone who's living the transcendent in the immanent. So it's not about like up and out. It's not like, okay, let me like sit and meditate longer and get better at meditating so I can be off in these realms of consciousness all the time. It's like, wow, how do I stay connected to source, to the divine in every moment of my life, so that my life is simply devotion and reverence to that. So it really is just everything for me. It's what allows me to be a father and a husband and everything in life. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know, man. I can say it's because I'm a Virgo or something like that, but otherwise I'm super anal and like in my head about everything, and like want to control and plan everything and fix everything. And, yoga is that like lets me chill out and not be controlled by those impulses, which is nice. So yeah, I mean, it's especially today in these times, like it's like the lifeboat. It's like, I see all those memes about being an introvert, which I am too, and like this being the time for introverts now. But this is also the time for yoga, of like, wow, man, like there's so much outside of our control right now. Yoga is the thing that helps us settle into being, and as you said, in the moment of where we don't need to control all that sort of stuff, where we can sort of just abide in being. And this stuff, it's not saying that you don't do anything, but it's that life is going to figure itself out whether or not you try to control it. So relax into it a bit more.
Your meme that you put on your Instagram completely reflects on what you were just speaking into.
You find out your normal lifestyle is called quarantine. I was like, yeah, that's me. Like, oh wait, I'm just staying home all day. I do that anyways. Like, really, I go out to teach. I come home. I go out to pick up my daughter. I come home. Like, I don't really have like a social life. I just do yoga and spend time with my family. So, and before I had a family, it was just, I just do yoga. So,
Right.
this is all right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's great when you're speaking about, and this will segue into question number 2, which is what inspired you to teach? And you can see on your Instagram that you're offering live stream, breathwork, mantra, meditation, but, take us back in time. So you were absorbing all this wisdom, information, like you're not reading it necessarily only in a book, but you are an adventurer, and you went out there. And myself, as I've shared with you before we went live, like I've traveled, studied, and lived in 13 countries. And that's how I became fluent in Spanish, and how just have this whole other perspective. I went to Japan when I was 15. I played in the high school marching band. And it's just like this massive like opening of my consciousness that happened. And I can't imagine for you. I mean, I can imagine. I just really, when I was in Costa Rica, the best thing I can relate, I studied at the National University there. I was there for 6 months, and the teachers from the University of Iowa, they came down to check in and be like, "Hey, how you doing with your studies?" And I was like, "I want to stay here. I don't want to go." They're like, "No, you got to return. Come back home. Come back home." The same thing for you, like when, as you said, your wife, when you both got pregnant, it's like, "Oh, I'm not going to leave," but you ended up here. So, once you get like, let's say, activated of you touch the reality and then the magic of it, right? And there's this bridge in between, and then there's got to be a shift in your motivations or your consciousness, or for me, because I've been a teacher for many years, not of yoga necessarily, but of other modalities of learning, whereas like, oh my gosh, I'm so lit up by this that I got to share it with the world, right? So take us back, and what was it that inspired you to teach?
So, I over the years, I find that unfortunately, perhaps for this question, that my answer isn't there isn't an answer of like, oh, there's this moment, and I just knew that I've always been a teacher. Like it's just something that, like, when I was a kid, and I see it in my daughter now, who coincidentally is also a Virgo, so maybe there's a little Virgo trait in there. Which
is that Vedic, or is that
Western astrology?
Okay, yeah.
My Vedic chart is all service, so it's all the same anyways. Like my Jyotish is like, oh, all you're here to do in this life is to serve. I'm like, yep.
Yeah, contribution, generosity.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I was inventing games and like teaching kids, like, let's play this game, and these are the rules, and like we gotta do all this stuff, and like always that's just kind of always been who I am. I'm a lifelong learner, and I think that's what makes me a teacher, is that I always want to learn more and to grow. And so part of that is sharing that. I think a great way to learn is to teach as well, because that always then doubles down on what I'm learning and grows even more. So my teaching always reflects what I'm learning and what I'm exploring myself. But I really can't think of a time that I wasn't teaching. So, to say like, well, what inspired me to teach? Like life inspired me to teach, like
your dharma.
Yeah. It wasn't just like, oh, I hit 26 and I did my first yoga teacher training and I knew I wanted to teach. It was just like, I've always taught. Before I was teaching yoga, I was teaching martial arts. Before that, I was just like teaching whatever cool stuff I was learning because it was fun. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's just as natural as breathing or anything else. Like I can't. It's taken at least probably like the whole 7 or 8 years, or since I've been with my wife a little bit longer, 9 years of like recognizing that it's not my job to be teaching everybody all the time, but that's my nature. So it took them a while to get used to like that just tendency of mine of wanting to share and like do things the right way. So like, but that can sometimes come across in the wrong way, but it works great in a teaching setting. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's a powerful combination to, we always talk about nature and nurture, right? So not only have this dharma, this gift, and if you know Jeffrey Armstrong, he teaches Vedic philosophy, and he talks about your dharma, and then he talks about harmony, so he calls it dharmony. And it feels like you're this representation of pure dharmony. So it's fantastic. I love to see that, witness that in you. And as I shared, for anyone that's listening right now, like I got to be on the mat when you were in the same county as I am currently in San Diego County. I got to be in multitudes of classes. In fact, at one point, I was going to cancel my membership at one of these yoga studios. And when you came on board, I was like, oh, no, forget. Yeah, I'm good. Disregard. So it was such a gift. And honestly, it's paying it forward as a teacher, as you said, because you get to go into this whole other, it's almost like Inception, right? A dream within a dream within a dream, because then you're honoring your teachers. And you spoke about Perry Ness and the chakra yoga and a multitude, Steve Copping and your Japanese jiu-jitsu sensei. And, it's really like passing the torch along. And so obviously, like for me as a musician, people say I have like a signature sound, a uniqueness to like all the genres of music that I've absorbed, and the influence of yoga in my own personal practice that then like gets inspired when I'm creating that intention. So if you were to add all those puzzle pieces of your lava adventures and the teachings, like what is it that makes your sessions or your classes, or someone that maybe has told you a testimonial, like what is it that they say, like Ashton, like what are some adjectives you've heard that they get out of your class?
Wow. I mean, adjectives, I don't know. I mean, I think
amazing, extraordinary, knowledgeable.
one of the things that just always comes up is presence, and with anything else is that I teach and practice presence. It's really about like, how do I we tend to spend so much time on the screen of the mind, which is fixated on the future or the past. And yoga is an opportunity to be present. And so really ultimately it comes back to like, wow, what are the tools that I have at my disposal, both for myself, but also as a teacher to share, of like, to help encourage people to be present. And so there's technical details. So there's plenty of, we've mentioned the anatomy side already, of like, wow, how can we utilize the understanding of the human body to like not be up in the brain and the head, and like bring it down into the body. Now, in Sanskrit, they don't differentiate so much between thought and feeling. The word is chitta, and while it's mind stuff, it's also including your feelings as well. So I mean, it's all part of the same thing. But in the West, because we tend to prioritize the thinking mind so much as part of our daily experience, just shifting to sensation can be a really powerful and radical shift in the way that we're approaching any moment-to-moment reality. So for people that are very heady, being embodied and just feeling their body is a super powerful way of doing that. And so we can geek out on the technical side of things and like pull up your inner thigh more, or activate. We can if I got super anatomy geeks in the room, we can talk about anatomy and stuff. But I think for me, a large part of what comes through as well is the tantric teachings. I mean, a lot of my teachers weren't mentioned there too, but Mark Deskowski, Harish Wallace, Christopher Tompkins, you mentioned Douglas. A lot of these amazing Kashmiri Shaivite teachers that they're teaching an empowered practice. I mean, some of them are Sri Vidya, which is South Indian. I teach more North Indian Tantra. But it's really about letting go of all of our ideas of how the world is supposed to be, how this moment's supposed to be, and getting us in touch with reality as it's arising in the moment. And so that's a really empowering thing to do, where if that's the object, then it doesn't matter how far you get in a forward fold. You're not more advanced if you can grab your foot and get your leg straight, or your leg behind your head. You're not an advanced yogi because you're balancing up on your fingertips. Like, none of that. Like, if you can do all those things, great. Practice yoga while you're doing all those things. But all that stuff is just fancy gymnastics. Now, I'm not opposed to it or poo-pooing on anything where you're doing those things. That's fine and great. But that in of itself isn't the yoga. And I think the richness of the understandings of the Kashmiri Shaivite tradition come through in my teachings. In San Diego, had to be a little bit more skillful in the ways that I would speak to that more, because we're a little bit more cautious around even a word like God or something like that.
Yes.
The community where I live in now, in Grass Valley, it's predominantly hippies, and interesting blend of like people that are like super liberal and super conservative. So it's an interesting mix, which don't need to get into that. But plenty of people here that have a really developed practice and been practicing for years, and I don't need to worry about making the practice more accessible. Where in San Diego, there's still a lot of that, where there's lots of people practicing. The majority of people are accessing it through asana practice, which is awesome and great, and I super support that. Here, my classes, we get into a lot more of the other elements of the yoga practice. So there's a lot more mantra, there's a lot more subtle body practices, a lot more meditation and breath work and things like that, which not that there's not interest in that in San Diego, but the majority of it is still like the classes that people would tend to respond to the most were like when they were crawling out of the classroom, you're like, oh my gosh, I can barely walk. That was so amazing. Thank you. Which is great. And I love that too. Like, I think the practice is designed to meet you where you are and not to like preach to you up from a pedestal. It's like wherever you are, there's your practice. So that's awesome. But for me, it's also really nice to be able to, I grew up on comics. So like, I love the superheroes, like Batman's tool belt. Like, if you need a grappling hook, you need a grappling hook. If you need like the dart gun, you need the dart gun. They're different tools. And there's times for either or. So it's nice to be able to really open up all the other tool sets. I mean, that's something too with all these online offerings too, is that we can geek out and offer all the different stuff, which is super cool. So yeah, I mean, I think that the side of really accessing authentic teachings that are not transcendent, but immanent, that are embodied teachings. We're not looking to escape anything. I mean, Hatha yoga in and of itself. So most people are familiar with the word Raja yoga, which they associate with Patanjali's yoga, but actually Patanjali's yoga is Ashtanga yoga, not Ashtanga like Patabi Joyce Ashtanga yoga, Krishnamacharya, but Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs. And it's an approach to Raja yoga, and Hatha yoga is also an approach to Raja yoga. Patanjali's approach is to get rid of the body, to find a state of kevalya, of isolation from the senses, to be in a state of samadhi, the transcendent state, which in Tantra we call turiya. You're supposed to be in the beyond. So you got to get there, but you got to leave your body to get there. Hatha yoga came along and said, well, you don't have to leave the body to get there. You can actually utilize the body and the senses to get there. But for both of them, the purpose is to get there. So all of life is an illusion. It's all Maya. It's something to be transcended. In the Tantric traditions, Maya is simply a misunderstanding of who you are. That realization is knowing who you are, that you are the great self, and that everything is just an expression of that. So there's nothing to transcend. There's nothing to get past. You don't get closer to enlightenment if you're meditating longer, or if you're deeper in a forward fold, or any of these sorts of things, or if you've been practicing, like you've lit up your chakras more. Like it's a state of realization. So I mean, all those things too are also great, but you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to. I mean, there's even methods where it's like you're not really doing anything. It's just look into your heart and realize that you're God. And it's like, poof, okay, I'm enlightened. Great. Like you get a lot of like the Chan Buddhist idea of things, the Zen Buddhist things. There's just like it's a sudden realization. Now that sudden realization might take 50 years of practice, but when it happens, it's a sudden realization. So yeah, I mean, that was a long way around that answer, but I mean, I think there's the connection to authentic tantric teachings, as well as, I'm a Westerner and I come from a massage background and an anatomy background. So I love to geek out on the human body and like get into things so we can really be embodied. And I'm all for us being healthy and like stable in our own being. So Hatha yoga is a great avenue for that as well. But my classes, there's no transcendence. There's no getting anywhere. Wherever you are, whatever body type you are, whatever anything, like the practice is for you. I love vigorous practices, which that practice isn't necessarily for everybody. But I teach and practice all sorts of physical practices, subtle practices, all of it. So I think there's like like I have a daughter, and sometimes go into a candy store, and candy stores are crazy, man. Like they got every type of candy you could possibly imagine. It's nuts. But that's the idea, because kids like different types of candy. And we're the same way. Like there's so many different flavors out there that, find the flavors that the flavor palette that works for you, and rock with that. And, I mean, I'm down to explore all the different candies too, and try it all out. So
give it a little sample. And so Anne has a comment.
Yeah.
Shenanigator. And I know that you mentioned your daughter, and I think she's speaking to your daughter here. I think you're the lovely assistant of your daughter when
Yes,
she watches your live stream. It's the reverse, right?
yes, it is. I'm persistent, most definitely.
Yeah, well, that's great because you mentioned, you know, how these tools that you've been able to have, whether you're Batman and you have um, whatever is in the cave that you can bring into, you know,
Your tool
the
belt, utility belt, man. You
yep,
need your smoke bombs, all the things.
yep. Yeah, and as you said, you're going to get there regardless. So whether you're in the Batmobile, if you're in a Honda, Toyota, a Tesla, like, you know, there's all different
Well,
body
I'll
types.
even stop you there. You're not going to get there because you're already there. I mean, that's
True,
the whole
correct.
thing, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's nowhere to
Yep.
get. Like,
Well, I think that, right? We've gotten our car out to go somewhere, and then you're like, I'm good. I'm just gonna go back in the house. You know, it's almost like that feeling.
yeah.
And it's that it's the shiny bright object syndrome of the West, right? It's the, hey, we got to have this and this. And I almost feel like in this moment, there's a reevaluation, almost like a reset button that's occurring. And I'll, you know, share for me on the microcosm here is like, whoa, like what is it I was seeking? Why was I just over hustling? And what was that validation or affirmation or worthiness issue that I possibly was looking at? And that was like, I'm in a men's group and the 10 of us were on a Zoom call last night. It's just like to have that brotherhood and that allowance of emotions. And I love when you were speaking about, you know, different parts of us that when we go down within, because as a lot of us know, and speaking into the anatomy, I mean, the brain in our skull is like what percentage of the entire organism, you know, but we pretend it's 100%. Like how, yeah. So like that's where I'm going into question 4 here is you talked about tools, you talked about, you know, these practices that we could have. So what practice or tool is most important in this moment?
Yeah. Well, you know, not to not give a sexy answer, but you know, it really comes back to like what works for you. That is to say, like I love to meditate, man. Like sitting in stillness is such a powerful practice for me. I mean, I love other things too. I love asana practice. I love puja. I love all these things where you're doing something. But for a lot of people, sitting down, first of all, is physically uncomfortable. So that's difficult, especially if you're in the West. And you haven't been sitting on the floor for most of your life. And also, if you're just used to thinking all the time, and I mean, the most common thing I hear all the time with meditation is like, what's meditation? It's where you stop thinking. It's where you're not thinking, or you try not to think, and all these things where it's like, man, that is the most difficult, frustrating thing in the world. Good luck with that. Like, you're going to hate meditation then, because that's got nothing to do with it. You don't need to stop thinking. Like in a meditative state, your mind, maybe it's thinking, maybe it's not, but your attention isn't anchored in your thinking. And that's the whole point, is that like if you're trying to do something, good luck trying to stop your mind. It's like trying to tell someone who's angry, calm down. Like no one calms down by telling them to calm down. Your mind doesn't get quiet by saying, I'm meditating now, I'm supposed to be quiet. So for a lot of people, meditation is gardening. Meditation is going for a run. Meditation is doing their asana practice. It's really, I'd say the practice is that which allows you to shift from a state of constantly prioritizing your thoughts and instead allows you to immerse into a state of being. I mean, it's the reason why really master athletes and artists all talk like yogis do, because they reach a state of being where they're not thinking about it being, if they're thinking about it, they're screwing it up. And so they need to achieve a state where, like, I mean, you're a musician, man. If you're thinking about your music, it's like fumbling around and it's awkward. It doesn't work. You have to like practice enough to get to that point where there's no more thought involved and you just get to express. And it's not, you're not doing it anymore. It's just being done through you. And that's what our yoga practice ultimately is getting to that state where life is that, where you're not doing it anymore. It's just being done through you. And it's not to say like, don't ever think, because then how are you going to pick up your kid from school at the right time? Or not that anyone's picking up kids from school right now because they're all closed, but like any of these things, like how do you think? It's so awesome that we've got these amazing creative minds that think things. It's just that that's not who or what we are. It's not the limits of who we are. So whatever practices help you realize that, to shift out of the mindset that I am my mind and my thoughts, that works great. And then there's all sorts of ways to refine that and dive deeper. And I mean, that's where we get the philosophical side of these traditions that give us a language and a framework with which to explore those states more profoundly. But I mean, first and foremost, anything that helps you get there. And I know right now everyone's talking about slowing down, and all, which I think is so powerful and great. I mean, touching on something you said earlier too, in the United States, having lived abroad for so many years, one of the things that's always a really difficult thing to approach and to deal with is that in the United States, your self-worth is usually associated to your productivity. And that's where we get the glorification of busy and the hustle, and like my self-worth is based on how much I'm doing right now. So, oh, how you doing? Oh, super busy, man. Super busy.
3 hours of sleep, man.
Yeah. And like people wear that like a badge of honor. Like that's a good thing. And then you go to these other countries where they're like, that's insane. Like, what are you doing? Like, that is nuts. So, you know, I mean, slowing down is a great thing. And in this whole sort of situation we're in right now, it's a great opportunity to do that. But for some people as well, like slowing down is so foreign that it would just generate insanity. Like telling a typical person in the West to like, who's just go, sit and be still. Again, they're not going to get something positive out of that experience. You need to get them doing something. I mean, that's all yogic ritual is just that. Like, you want to get super complicated and like rub your head and do this and pour this and say this mantra and do this breath work. We can get as complicated as you want so that you have to stay super busy. Like, that's what puja essentially is. Here's how to be present by getting as busy as possible. And that's cool and that works and that's wonderful. But also you don't need any of that. You can just sit and be. But for most people, they need to do something. So it really is what helps you, Dave, me, Ashton, anybody, like what helps you do that. And then so I'd say do the heck out of that. Do that as often as you can. Paint a picture, ride a bike, make a piece of art, write a song, like do yoga. That's really what I'd say is the most important thing right now for people to do, something that allows them to connect to their true nature rather than all this stuff and their ideas in their head about themselves. Because you say in my primary text that I work from is the Shiva Sutras, right? And it says Udyamo Bhairava, that consciousness is simply an upsurge. It's just a happening. It's just what is happening in this moment. But we're so caught up in our thought process of everything and our ideas of everything that we're not actually in reality. We're in ideas of reality. And when our reality doesn't meet our ideas, we suffer. We're like, I was expecting to drive to work today. Now I can't because a flat tire or because of coronavirus. So now I'm upset. Now I'm suffering. I expect my partner to do this and they didn't. So now I'm upset. Like, we're constantly in that state. What allows you to shift out of that into a state of being, just to access Bhairava, uprising in this moment, awareness happening in this moment, which has it's our mind that wants to say like, well, that's a good uprising or a bad uprising, or get more of that uprising, or do that. It says, but nah, it's just this happening right now. So yeah, I mean, so it's not like here's the one technique that's going to save you all. You still got to figure out what works for you. But the good news is you get to do the stuff that works for you. That really like, you don't need to like do the practice that worked for somebody else. You get to do the thing that works for you. So
I love that. Yeah, and who knows? Maybe you get back to basics. Like what I've recognized is like the other day, Himalaya and I, we did like 3 different loops at different times of the day. We went on this hike in nature and we're walking, we're just present, we're just in this flow state. We're just like, you feel like a kid playing in the sandbox of time, and you're just like, there's the grains of sand, you know, just here and now. And what you said earlier, I want to provide a quote that gives relevance for me as a musician. John Lennon said he did not write one song, he allowed for the songs to write themselves. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and that's it right there, man. That's the whole thing of like, we all think that we need to write the song of our lives, like life isn't writing our song already, you know? And so we think that burden is ours, which is exhausting. And
Yeah.
it's like, no. Get present, and life will write your song for you. And that's whatever practice helps that process along, then I'd say, keep encouraging that.
Yeah. And my invitation for anyone watching is to really reinvent yourself. That's one of the coolest parts about being a human organism. It's like we're alive, we're a part of Gaia Pachamama. And it's like, and when I was on these hikes and walks, it's like life is here, and a lot of times we're quarantined, we're inside the house, we're seeing, of course there's a reality that's happening of this virus that's, COVID-19, and we get to like be educated and listen to our scientists and understand what precautions need to take place. And then we also find the ability to carry on and to find what it is. So I have to put this on the screen. I don't see who wrote it. Someone said they thought, because you said you're a big Batman fan, so I thought you'd like that. Oh, that's amazing. And actually, one of the things Joaquin Phoenix mentioned was about our connection and unity to Mother Earth. And, the virus came from what they're speaking into is like our not practicing ahimsa, right? We're not being kind and, compassionate or empathetic to other beings all the time, including ourselves, right? It starts with us. So that's an interesting part of if we were to reverse engineer what's happening. Do you have any perspective on that? Or?
Well, I mean, the one sort of shift in my approach, and a lot of what we get with the sort of Samkhya ideas and Advaita Vedanta ideas that we get in the West, sort of imported from India, where you're mentioning like ahimsa and things like that, which is one of it's coming from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Tantra, not that it doesn't have yamas and niyamas, but the approach, I think some of the worst things in the world are done by those thinking they know the right thing to do. So, like I'm not interested in preaching to anybody about the right thing to do. I'm completely confident that when you're connected to source, the right thing arises. And like when you're feeling one with everybody, like you don't want to hurt people. You don't want to like be mean, like any of those sorts of things. It's not to say perhaps rage doesn't come up in a moment or whatever it may be, but like I think the important thing is to emphasize connecting with source, and then those things naturally arise. That it's the fragrance that comes off when you are connected. It's not something that needs to be another idea in your head that you're supposed to follow, and if you don't, you're not spiritual, or you're screwing up, or it's your fault. It's like, man, connect to source, and that stuff will all naturally flow. So, like I don't take the position like, well, we all need to be nicer to each other, because that's how things get hurt. Because you got one group of people saying, well, we know what nice is. You don't, you're wrong. So we need to stop you from doing it. And that's where we get all the wars and all the conflict and everything else. And it's just like, man, shut up. Get silent, connect with yourself, and you'll realize, man, I don't know, like I got no need to fight with that person. Like, that's my brother, that's my sister. Like we're the same. So spending time less on intellectualizing it and more just on connecting, that to me is what it's all about.
I love that. Yeah. And having like a heart-centered purpose in life. And, it goes back to like, my God's better than your God, or I know the answer to this. And it's that, we're fighting over toilet paper, because it's a scarcity mentality, right?
Totally.
And it's that, there's that human frenzy. And speaking about the mind is, when you almost bypass reasoning and it's just like, I just need to survive. And then all of a sudden you do what you believe your emotional state or what someone posts, and go to the stores now. I actually got like we're in information fatigue right now. Truly. I got a text from a friend who was like, all right, president's about to announce at noon, all shops, every store, every grocery store is gonna be closed. Go now. So imagine if that went out, I don't know how many people it went to. I took a breath, right? So I get to interpret things. I get to have my own experience. And this is one of the ways that I know that you're sharing about living is like whatever is in alignment for ourselves and whatever we feel is best. And also to breathe, I think if every human being were to just take 3 breaths before even like simple, choices like, oh, I have a friend that sent me a text in this like frenzied time in human history. Do I jump in the car, put myself at risk, and do something? And then in the end, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't worth it. And at the same time, and I saw your post about the bidet, or what Himalaya says, because she's Punjabi, she's like, the right hand's for the food, the left hand's. Right. And you wrote the same thing.
You don't mess with the left hand, man.
Yeah, that's she. Her being Punjabi, she showed me that too. She was, and that's the thing. Like, it's all about, as you said, there's an illusion and perception. So Himalaya is like, what is the going on? Like, why is everyone like, paper? Really? Just go in the shower and wash your butt, like, get over it, or get a bidet or whatever.
I'm actually, we don't have bum guns at our house because we got a bidet, but like, I'm a bigger fan of the bum gun. It's way more like, the bidet like sprays up and like it hits things if you're a guy, or can sometimes hit the wall if you're not aimed right. The bum gun, you get much more control. I mean, I lived in Thailand for 6 years, so it's like being able to wash and maneuver is way better. So if anyone listening, I thumbs up for the bum gun. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them anywhere. Like I take that before the bidet, but we have a bidet.
That's awesome.
And I take
and I think
toilet paper.
There you go. So you could be your own superhero. You got the bum gun. You got like all these fun tools.
Absolutely. Well, and I say too, man, like if you were to get poo on your hand, you wouldn't wipe your hand with a piece of paper and think your hand is clean. You'd wash your hand, wash your butt. Like using dead trees to try to clean your butt seems so barbaric. And then, let alone hoarding dead trees so you can wipe your butt with it sounds even more ridiculous. It's like, but again, I mean, to give a little context to that, like this phenomenon has nothing to do with toilet paper. It has everything to do with our culture that soothes through buying. And it's like, I'm nervous, I'm scared, so I'm going to go purchase things. I'm going to go buy stuff because we get retail therapy in this culture. So it's like, I see it as an extension of that, and got nothing but compassion for anyone, whether it's toilet paper, whether it's something else. Like, I get it. But again, as we were both saying, like, man, tap into source in those moments. Like, take a moment of pause in between all your thoughts that are racing about it, and really connect in. And then perhaps you'll be less motivated to freak out and run and go buy something to try to feel better, because you realize that what you were hoping to get by going out and buying 50 rolls of toilet paper is actually already inside your heart right here, right now.
Yeah. And for me personally, I'll just share authentically, like I've been experiencing like a scarcity psychology within me of, I was teaching part-time at this campus, and they're going online, and I spoke with the director of the academy today, so I feel grateful for that. And my entire 2020 tour has pretty much been postponed. Emily and I were going to be at the Sedona Yoga Festival, Lucidity, Lightning in a Bottle, Bhakti Fest, Shakti Fest, Hanuman Festival, and it's just like, when you're in that call, I feel, to serve in that capacity, and all of a sudden it's like, that's not available anymore. Here we are online, and we get to also, I'm really grateful that human beings were able to create an infrastructure that you and I are basking in and swimming in, the pixelations of time and space, and to really be connected more so than ever. I've been on multiple either conference calls, Zoom calls, live streaming, and there's a level of connectivity on a global scale that I don't know if it was as present as it's becoming. So I almost feel like there's a shift or a pivot or a groundedness that personally, again, like this is my opinion, like I'm feeling grounded in my body more than ever. And I don't know if, there's always a silver lining with anything, I would say. And I guess I'm an optimist at heart. And it's that, okay, here's the reality of what's like the best practices to have in these situations. And I was a Boy Scout, so, of course, be prepared. And I feel like your adventures, as you were sharing, has allowed you to be prepared for all the situations in your life, all the unknown. And so I have a question here, like as a yogi, what's the yogi's interpretation of the unknown?
Well, I mean, that I would say it's more of a personal thing than a yogi thing, because if we're going yogi, then you have to say, well, which tradition? Because there's no consensus agreement on any of that sort of stuff.
But you said it's asking questions, though, right? Like if you didn't know something, you would have a platform to go to the monastery, ask a question. Like in the West, if you don't know something, then it's like, well, here's the answer. Like this or this, like if you had a question or like questioning the world or society, it was almost like just, just listen to what I'm saying or do what I say. And you couldn't like peel back that layer. So I feel like, put it this way, from all your adventures of going to Thailand, India, these places, when you don't know something or when there's something that you have a question about, do you feel like your experience in those cultures has allowed for you to have a different presence?
Well, I think travel in general definitely does, because not only is it you're completely out of your comfort zone, you're out of a realm of like your routine, what you know, and so you are constantly in the unknown. So it's all about adapting. I spent half a year driving around India on motorcycle, and it's like,
oh yeah, I remember that story.
And everything else. It's like, man, you can't predict anything, so you're constantly in that state of the unknown. So there's definitely a preparation that travel can give for something like that. But I would also, tie it back to what we were saying earlier, though, and it's also not only the second verse of the Shiva Sutras, but it's actually repeated as the second verse of the third chapter, which is Jnanam Bandhaha, that knowledge is bondage. Is that we think that we're going to get the answers by knowing more stuff, but in truth, the only knowledge you need to know is who you are. And when you know that, then all of the stress, all the anxiety, all the worries, like they shift into something else. And then you're free to go learn more about that thing that you wanted to learn about, whatever it may be. But it's not that that's going to give you some magical answer that's going to like fix all of your problems. It's really about like, man, you have to know who you are. And that's the fundamental realization always, that the practice is always being back to. And I don't mean who you are as in like, well, I'm Ashton and my deepest heart desires to lay on a beach with the pina colada and like relax. I mean like, who you are beyond your ideas of yourself, beyond your body, beyond all this stuff. And that's, again, give it whatever name you want. In my traditions, we call it Bhairava or Shiva. You can call it Steve, you can call it Nancy, call it Durga, call it whatever, the Tao, your highest self, but it's beyond all of that. And if you can get in touch with that, then you're actually liberated to enjoy the experience of being and learning all of this amazing stuff that then just becomes a natural expression of you being centered in who you really are. And then you get to make your music, you get to make your art, you get to do whatever it is that you feel inspired through this vehicle of body and mind that you're inhabiting. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, all that other stuff, it's just another little trick that the mind's telling you that, well, if you learn this new thing, then life's going to be better and easier. Maybe it does for like a minute, but then your mind finds something else to worry about or something new. And it just becomes like this grab for that next thing. You're always chasing the right white rabbit. But when you're grounded in who you are, man, it all just comes out naturally as just a natural expression of being. And there's, and let me be clear about this. I'm not living in some state myself where I'm like, I have no stress and no worries. And like, that's why we have a practice, right? Of like, there's moments where you start believing your own storyline in your head and you get caught up in it again. We all do. I do all the time. I mean, I have the same worries as you with all this corona, like most of my income is now gone. So it's like, what do you do? But my emphasis is not on let me get more clever and figure out all the ways to make more money and that's going to solve my problems. Instead, it's shit, how do I anchor into my being more to abide as who I really am? And then I can go out and do all these things that are like, ooh, this is exciting. Let's try this and let's do that. And like, I mean, the things that we need will come or they won't, but it won't matter as much because I will be basking in the being of just this moment. And that's the point of like, man, like we're not getting caught up. Beware of the clever man, like the person that thinks that just they can navigate and fix life and one up it, which is all what Western American culture is about. Like, I'm going to figure out how to like kick the shit out of my day so I can win.
I'm gonna crush it. It's gonna blow up. I'm gonna take it to the next level.
As we're learning, that's exhausting, and it's a stress that kills. So I don't encourage people to like run out after and chase those things. Get to know who you are, and then you'll really realize like the things that are naturally arising, and that's great too. And then you get to do all those things that your mind was trying to tell you about before, but you're no longer seeking the fulfillment through them. They're just a natural fragrance that comes off of you being connected to yourself, and then the particulars of your body, where you were born, how you were raised, your culture, whatever those things may be. You were talking nature or nurture, you know, of like how that all came out, and then you'll get to express those things naturally, which is beautiful. And the divine is constantly finding new ways to express and to explore itself, which is just beautiful.
Yeah, it's like shaking the tree, and it's like for me, it's been, you know, what's a need and what's a want, and to really redefine that.
Definitely.
Oh wow, I love speaking with you, brother. It's awesome. Just like so much goodness, and I love the ability for all of us to experience the human emotions that are present, and we pick up on other emotions, right? When I had a friend that was on a 10-day Vipassana, comes back and it's like, holy crap, what just like, am I on a different planet? What just happened? And like adaptivity, resilience, presence is like such a gem that you're here to share with the planet. And the distinction of what's the person and the planet, and how is that interconnected, and are we choosing to feel that connection within ourselves? And because right now it's about stay quarantined, be inside, not for your own good necessarily, but for the good of those most vulnerable. And so it's a whole paradigm shift, and it's more of the we than the me, which for a country that's specifically, I know this is globally live streaming now, for people that are in Western culture, specifically the United States, it's usually like an individualistic, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, here's you're going to like rise and create it.
Finally realizing now as a culture that what a farce that is, and like how absolutely absurd thinking that you do anything by yourself is just absolutely asinine. We cannot do anything without the collective. And like hopefully if any good comes out of the current situation is people really start to recognize that more, that like, man, there is no like, I'm gonna pull up my bootstraps and like do it myself. Yep. Like that individual deterministic American attitude. It's like, dude, we're all completely connected, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, whether you feel it or not. Like it's there. It's true. Like, and I don't expect anyone to believe it. That's why we've got the practices of yoga, because you can experience it. Don't believe it by any means. So if you're listening and you're like, I don't fucking believe that, that's bullshit, and then like, don't believe it. Don't believe me. Don't believe anybody. Like, but I would encourage you to try the practices so you can experience it for yourself.
And what you were saying earlier, I think is really interesting, because a lot of us, and I went through the pathway of academia. My dad was a school teacher for 35 years. I got my master's degree as a school teacher, like checking off the boxes of like what makes you a scholar and educated and all this. So how is it, and I taught, teenagers, and I still teach teenagers. It's so interesting. They almost have gone past the information age, right? So what the knowledge you were sharing earlier with us is that it's not about the knowledge. It's not about necessarily having everything in your mind and, jam-packed with anything. Like I'm like mega Google, and I got, Megatron Google. I got the superpowers that anything you say, hey Siri, hey Google. And so it's interesting, because in the information age, do you feel like, we've had the industrialized age and all of these agrarian age before that, or in the information age? As a prediction, it's interesting to see, like, is this gonna, theoretically, what I was feeling when you were sharing earlier is, so what if the level of presence, or no level, let's scratch that, presence itself was presence, period, right? Let's say 7.7 billion human beings all of a sudden are like, boom, present in the moment. Like, what possibilities for human consciousness would be available for us?
Yeah, I mean, that, I'm not a futurist, so I can't I can't even begin to really go in that place. But what I can know from my own experience, that if everyone was living in a state of the realization that we're connected and are everything, the world's going to look a heck of a lot different. You're not going to have people complaining about sharing. You're not going to have people complaining about helping one another. You know, like, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? Like, it would just be like, but there's nothing else to do. Like, that's what we do. And so it wouldn't be an argument anymore. But again, if you try to convince somebody of that through information, you get more divide. And that's what we see, especially in America right now. You just get this huge divide between people because you got people yelling at other sides, thinking that they're right with stuff, which is like, man, if we were all connected, it would be about figuring it out. I mean, that's, you've mentioned your relationship, and I'm a married guy. Like, marriage is about figuring it out. Like, how, from connection first, how do you figure it out? And if you're starting from connection, things work out. If you're starting from boundaries and barriers, and I'm separate over here and you're separate over there, and I'm going to negotiate my territory and you're going to negotiate your territory, good luck, man. I mean, it's going to be more conflict, more battles. The more aggressive person's probably going to win. And that's what we see so much in the world today. I mean, I would love it if people were coming from connection, you know, presence, rather than thought and thinking. But the beauty of it is that I don't know that it needs to be that, though. Because, I mean, as scary as these times are and everything that's going on, like, this is all the way that consciousness is expressing itself in its own freedom. And if we didn't have the freedom to screw up, then what would we have? So, you know, it's one of those things that, like, it sucks, but also it's like, thank goodness we have the ability as beings to screw up and to feel disconnected. Because that's what the teachings and the context of the teachings are all there for us to realize that, like, you know, like, you don't have the savior mentality as much in here. Like, we got to save the world, where the world's going to do just fine. If all human life was wiped out, world's still happening. It's still going on. It's going to be, probably would be better off. But, you know, hopefully that nothing like that ever happens. But, you know, I think on a personal level, just if people were more connected in any given moment, whether it's this moment or a future moment, I mean, that sounds pretty awesome and amazing to me. But, you know, my place is not to tell people that they should be more connected, because that's the right thing to do. They need to be more woke. You know, my position in life is, how do I connect more? Because I know that I have moments where I lose my stuff and I get angry and upset and I feel disconnected. I want to punch somebody in the face. I want to, like, yell at somebody with a different opinion than mine. And I do so regularly, unfortunately. So my work is with me, not with anybody else. You know, and I mean, I'm a teacher, but I don't teach people to, like, be like me. I teach them to learn how to connect to source, and that's it. And then hopefully we can meet there and have a really great conversation and connection and exploration around it. But, you know, otherwise it's just me on my island yelling over to you on your island, and, you know, nothing really comes out of that.
Wow. Today I had a great conversation with a music producer, and a lot of fellow producers that are creating music for yoga, breathwork, meditation, movement. It was powerful, and we're just all, like, electromagnetically finding each other. And what's powerful, we were saying, traditionally in the music industry, it's exactly what you said, that paradigm of competition. I'm going to squash you, you know, I'm going to get the #1 record, and I'm going to do this. And all of us are just blown away how heart-centered we are. We're like, yeah, it's all about collaboration. You know, it's like 3 main things. It's like shared vision, shared purpose, complementary skill sets. It's like, wow, I play the piano. Oh, you play the drums. Awesome. Oh, you create the sax and the electronic sounds, and you can do a chant, a mantra. And what's great, Ashton, is you ohmed on the Crown Chakra song on my 7 Songs for 7 Chakra album. So you're a contributor as well. The same philosophy that I'm sharing in this moment. It's about collaboration, reaching out to our fellow brothers and sisters and saying, hey, let's all work together and let's create, or I have this vision and we have a shared purpose, and now we have the complementary skill sets where we get to come together. And as you said, like, as you and your family unit and your mini community within the larger global community, it's like powerful to see. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to show a little sample of your most recent Facebook Live. And this goes into number 5, is how people can find you online.
Great.
And awesome. So here we have amazing home practice.
And then we're going to put our arms up like a hungry
Yeah. So what posture is this?
Hungry bear pose.
Hungry bear. Oh my gosh, I love it. It's so great. Wonderful. And so you're going to be offering more classes online. Here's your website, Yoga with Ashton, and your Instagram. And so you're doing all the live streaming on your Facebook page. Is that right?
Yeah, so I live stream on Facebook. I also live stream on YouTube. My YouTube, I actually have Yoga with Ashton, but I'm like, I've been locked out of it for years. I need to contact YouTube or something. But I do a lot of that on anatomyofliving.com, which is another website of mine that has some of my podcasting stuff in that too, but also the YouTube pages on that. So the live streams are currently live streamed on YouTube through Anatomy of Living. But for these, the kids yoga is happy home yoga, home as in home. So all the kids family stuff will be out on that. But then they're all also streamed just on my regular channel.
Okay, so where can people find the Happy Home Yoga? Is that YouTube or is
YouTube? Yeah, that's where all the kids stuff is, all the family yoga. That's where this video is. So Happy Home Yoga.
Well, what's wonderful, I feel, is how many parents, including yourself, you know, I don't know how many months we're going to be in the situation we're currently in, and you know, some school districts for sure are not going to be back in session for maybe 2 weeks. Some are saying 6 weeks, you know, multiple months possibly, where now it's the time. So anyone out there that has children specifically, if you want to have a home practice and really like have a routine, this is what I would suggest. I'm not a parent. I'm going to speak for myself and mi amor, Himalaya. We have a routine where we wake up at a certain time. We're at the altar in the morning together, and then she does her live streaming show in the morning. And really, I feel it's great. And so, when do you and your daughter do yoga? Do you have a particular time of day? So, any parent out there maybe would be inspired by what you're. Oh my God, you're the hungry. Oh my goodness, this is awesome.
We're eating fish.
This is great. Oh my gosh.
So I mean, my Virgo-ness is super routine, but everything that's going on right now, my routine is like all over the place.
Got it. Do you feel okay? So, is there a pattern that you feel like evolving?
We're working on that. So that's what we're trying to kind of figure out right now. Is like, man, what is our routine? Because that's a little hard to find right now. Just as everything's changing and we don't know what's happening and everything else. So it really is just a matter of like, okay, how do we find our routine right now? There's a bit like I usually wake up, live stream. My wife and daughter do some school stuff, and then I get done, do my own practice, might start doing work stuff. Maybe we have a little bit of lunch, do some more work stuff. Then we've been doing some of the kids yoga stuff in the afternoon. And then we have some more family time and then dinner. And then, you know, when Sequoia gets put to bed, then I do more practice. And then usually like read or things like that. Like I'm a super geek when it comes to, in particular, the Kashmiri Shibai texts. So I tend to geek out on that stuff all day long, or all night long anyways. So, you know, there's kind of a routine, but it's been a little funky recently.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. I'm a firm believer for myself in routine. Like I get a little scattered sometimes without routine. So routine definitely helps me stay grounded in what's most important. So yeah, it helps me. We're still working on the new Newsom, the governor was talking to about like it might be school years done until fall.
Yeah,
like,
I heard that.
Okay, so now like homeschooling and all that sort of stuff. We're trying to figure out what's going to work best for our daughter and for us and all of that. But I think a lot of people are in the same boat right now. Like what even do we do? So yeah, trying to establish a routine, I'd say is a great idea.
Yeah, and I think it's so wonderful that you're offering and sharing and being such a generous human being of like bringing people into your world of like, oh, here's me and Sequoia and us just playing Hungry Bear, and you know, it's just so great. And I definitely encourage, as Anne was saying earlier in the comment, to have more of your lovely assistant, or you being the lovely assistant.
She wants to teach some classes just herself too, so those are coming.
Ah, naturally.
Yeah, she taught her first class in Costa Rica when she was like 4. But she's a tough teacher, let me tell you. She's like, side plank, downward dog, you know, so she can be pretty tough. So she's gotten a little softer over the years now that she's 8, but she's a little tougher than I am.
Well, so you're like anatomy 1.0, and she's taking it like 20.0.
Drill sergeant, do this pose.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I really appreciate your energy, your presence, and wow, if anyone out there is inspired what Ashton is sharing, go to his website, yogawithashton.com, check out his Instagram, Yoga with Ashton. And if you have any comments or questions, just put it in the feed below, and we'll make sure that Ashton will see that and respond. And so are you going to have I think Wednesday evening you did a live stream. Are you starting to figure out when?
I'm trying to have daily live. Well, I've had daily live streams, not necessarily of Awesome every day. Today I didn't have one in the morning. Getting this, don't need to get this, but my dad had an operation today, so a little preoccupied with stuff in the morning. But and next week I start a little bit more through some offerings of a local yoga studio here that I teach at, that we're trying to move more of the classes online for the local community. So I'll be producing a little bit more of those, and I'm trying to make sure that I balance with my family home as much, which I could do in our normal schedules. Now I'm trying to figure out, like, so I'm not just working all the time and trying to produce content that I've got time with my family. So definitely there's stuff coming up every day. It's a little scattered in terms of, like, you know, some days it's a asana class and a meditation. Some days it's a kids yoga class and a meditation. But it's regular content, and I'm putting up there as much as I can, just creating stuff. And I've got the capacity here. So, and the tools. So just sharing the practice, sharing what I can. And I think right now, just finding ways as a community, as a global community, ways for us all to connect. So it's daily, but I don't know that just yet I could say it's always going to be this, always at this time.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Well, as long as people follow you.
I always try to do some like okay, it's coming in 3 hours, or coming later today, or tomorrow will be at this time. But but right now it's still a little cuckoo.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I think everyone's experiencing that. We can all breathe into that reality and just recognize and be still and stay connected to what's coming through and what is emerging and what is evoking whatever kind of possible actions or stillness in our lives and our world. And yeah, so this is an awesome moment for us to see it as an opportunity, and also to see it as the time to, like, go inward for me personally. And I recognize the power of what you're providing all of us in the world, and is presence. And, you know, a lot of us, as you said, are worried about how bad it's going to get in the future, or going in the past and worrying about something that happened. Oh, I wish I would have done that. Or even the other day, it was like, we thought of, like, oh, we were going to go do this a few months ago, but now we could have or should have, you know. It's like, don't shit on yourself. Don't shit on yourself. Right.
And don't shit on yourself or others.
Precisely. So, like, the power of presence and being right here, right now. So, and it's an honor to be here right now with you, brother. And I'm so grateful that we're able to connect, and appreciate you a lot. Much love.
Appreciate you too, man. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoy it. Keep doing what you're doing. Love you, man. We'll keep connecting. I got cat hair all over my hands because my cat sits on my lap and all this stuff.
Awesome. You're channeling the cat's energy. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Shakti Ma. All right. Love you, brother.
I love you too, man. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Equally. Take care, brother.